right. Hi, everybody. This is Nerd Initiative. We are talking about Thor, Love and Thunder. This is our second discussion about the film. We have 5 of our contributors here who are super excited to talk about this film. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm Donavan Rose.
I'm Tony, or you know me as Mr. Marvelite.
I'm Micah. I'm the pop culture rabbi.
I'm Tara, or that nerd Tara on TikTok.
All right. And then if we want to go ahead and get started with the reviews, just what we thought about the movie, I'll go first. This is the 4th Thor film. To me, it is the 3rd because Thor: The Dark World is very hard for me to get through. Unfortunately, I know it's essential, but this is probably tied. I'm so sorry. My favorite part of Thor: The Dark World was Captain America's 2-second cameo. But anyways, I definitely loved this film. It was such a fun, exciting thing. I was definitely smiling through the whole entire thing. If you liked Ragnarok, you're going to love this film. And Ragnarok for the longest time has been one of my favorite MCU films. So I don't know if this one beats it yet. I have to go see it once more to see if that is going to happen. But I love the gay. So it may just put it over the top with the gay in it.
So I was excited about Thor: Love and Thunder because this is the fourth film that we've gotten for any of our standalone films, which was extremely exciting. And I think a lot of people had expectations of what was going to end up happening, since a lot of these trilogies kind of like curve into, it being the finale of the characters, like, individual arc. But I was extremely excited because we got a lot of promise for more story to come. And this movie was in a way unexpected. I love how even the title, and this is not a spoiler, even the title is not really set in this movie the way you expect it to be, which I find as very interesting. And as I've been learning more about what went into the production of this movie, I am loving it even more, knowing how personal this film was. Even though this is a Taika Waititi film, there were such little tidbits to the production that they involved with the kids and with the cruise kids and everything else that just made it even a better film for me. So I was definitely excited for that. Not, mind you, it was a spectacle, and I loved that about it.
So I got to see it a second time last night. And I will say, seeing it a second time, I enjoyed it the first time. I enjoyed it more the second time because I was able to take it in. There were some things that I was looking forward to that didn't hit as well the second time that I thought were going to. Some of the jokes. The jokes are a lot, I will say. At the same time, I feel like with the Marvel universe, what we're getting is the same thing you would get with comic book runs. And you'd get like a Frank Miller or another author who would come in and tell a story, and they have a style, and this is Taika Waititi's style. And I kind of, as I was watching it, I felt like he's the guy in the staff meetings that like has to tell a joke, like can't stand silence. So there's just a joke coming, and I think it works well. And there's times when I just want a moment to breathe, like when, spoilers ahead, when Valkyrie and Jane ding their weapons together at the end. I wanted that scene to breathe for a second. Like, it cut a little too quick for me. And I know that's just one moment, but and it makes it sound like I didn't enjoy the movie, but I really did love it. I loved the themes. As a rabbi, it really gave me a lot to think about in terms of people's relationships with God and their gods, why some people, probably would like to have a necro sword to go after their gods. And what does it mean when gods don't answer your prayer? And what do gods owe us? And so I think it actually raised a lot of really good questions. And I do think that Taika Waititi made some really compelling arguments underneath all those jokes. So, and sometimes with the jokes.
I was terrified going into this movie because of everything that I had seen. And I was trying so hard not to look at spoilers, but like obviously on Twitter, it's really hard. And I was scared. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I don't get the hate that the movie is getting. Because I feel like with Ragnarok, that was such a change from the previous two Thor movies. And it didn't get the hate that this got. Like, we knew what we were expecting going in and sitting down to see this movie. So it just really surprised me how many people are just sort of like panning Taika and just very angry at this movie. I don't know if you guys have seen the same sort of sentiment from other people, but that's like the overwhelming thing I'm getting right now. And I just don't see it. I loved this movie. I enjoyed it. And I can't wait to go see it again.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'm up. I also really enjoyed the movie, especially since like the first two Thor movies weren't that good, despite the fact that I have the Thor Dark World poster back there. I just think the poster looks cool, but yeah, I mean,
too.
So whenever I talked to this about like TikTok, and you guys have mentioned this before, but I really think Taika Waititi has just absolutely saved the Thor franchise. I mean, the first two Thor movies, even though Rotten Tomatoes isn't like a great source of like scoring movies, their scores were like pretty low for those movies compared to like other Marvel movies. But I went into it and with a pretty open mind, not knowing really what to expect. But I overall really enjoyed it. My only problem was that it was really fast paced, and it just felt like we jumped from one scene to another a little faster than I would have liked. But that's honestly just a nitpick, if anything.
And it actually does, I will say, Brooke, it gets better when you see it the second time.
I agree. I just saw it for a second time today, and it definitely helps.
Because like there's the whole scene where he takes the necro sword in the beginning and they lay out the entire plot in flashes.
Yeah.
No, but I agree, right? It's one of those things I totally missed the first time I saw it, and then seeing it a second time, it was like, oh, okay, they're laying out the roadmap for what we're about to watch and his motivation and everything. And like, I mean, they also know it's like comic books, or I mean, Tara, how many times have you watched Loki? Right? Like,
yeah,
they know that we're gonna rewatch.
No, she doesn't watch Loki at all.
Never. But they know that we're going to rewatch these movies over and over again. So it's like, you don't have to get everything the first time.
Right.
You know, honestly, I'm gonna be upfront with everybody. I love the pacing and I loved how short it was. And maybe it's because in the last week and a half, I have been binging Naruto and trying to get into anime. And my biggest complaint with anime is I am so enveloped in the story that I don't realize that I have gone through like 12 episodes to get through one fight. And it is the most, it's literally like before they even swing, you've had 2 episodes of them just thinking about swinging. Like it's that kind of like that pace for me. Now I know I'm over exaggerating, but what like Multiverse of Madness, what Thor Love and Thunder have done is they're telling a quick story in universe that doesn't need a whole lot of exposition, but leaves a lot of Easter eggs that you can go back and watch over and over and over again. Because let's face it, if we kept having 3-hour-long No Way Homes and End Games, we would get extremely burnt out. Because that was an argument back when No Way Home gave its runtime of like 3 hours. People were like, oh, they're trying to be like Endgame, and do we really need movies that long? And then we have a 2-hour film and they're like, that's too short. And so we have this spoiled mentality where we keep thinking, it doesn't, it's like Straw Hat Goofy just put out a video where he was talking about how phase 4 is not as conducive as the previous 3 phases because they don't really build into the world as much. Eternals, it was like its own story. Doctor Strange is its own story, but they forget phases 1 through 3 had to create the world that the rest of phase 4 lives in. We don't need to build the world. The foundation's already there.
I'm just curious, what phases, and with all due respect to Straw Hat, because he's from LA, I really like him. What phases were these people watching? Ant-Man, didn't tie into, I mean, it
Right.
did, but it didn't. You have that whole thing in Ant-Man 2 where you have this mysterious boss that they haven't paid off yet. You have the Incredible Hulk. I think it was the Incredible Hulk, not just Hulk. You have the Incredible Hulk with what's his name that they haven't paid off yet? Like,
Blonsky. Yeah.
no, not Polanski, the other one. His other arch nemesis. I'm like,
Leader.
the leader. Thank you. So, like, I don't know. If anything, we're just getting more and more questions, but everybody's this is people's memories, and this is how it always works, is you remember the last thing. Endgame Infinity War brought everything together. So did Endgame. Before that, Doctor Strange was its own standalone movie. Black Panther was its own standalone movie. Captain America, the First Avenger, is the only one that really tied into the larger because of the very end of it. But everything else, Iron Man 2 tied in, but Iron Man 3 was its own solo adventure. I know people didn't love all those films, but that's what
most of the connections
is.
were through the end credit scenes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I think the problem too is that there is so much content coming out, and it's easy to get overwhelmed and try to figure out how it all connects. We know it does, we know it's going to, but right now it does feel a little messy. But I do have faith that at a certain point we're going to figure out what's going on.
Well, let's also rewind. Like when we talk about like the first phase of Marvel, we didn't know if these movies were ever going to connect to become something big. And then at the end of Avengers, we had that nod to Thanos, which I'm thinking, oh, we're gonna get death at some point. And then here's what happens. When we walked out of those movies, we might have gone on YouTube to catch things that somebody put out there, but you didn't have TikTok, and everything else where it was like breaking down the minutia of every piece of the thing. We would be like, oh wow, that was a really good film. I can't wait to see what they do next. I mean, Loki happens, and how many discussions have we had about sacred timelines and loops and Nexus events and all of these things? And then what if we have like, what's a fixed point? How does that work? WandaVision. I mean, let's face it. Like, I had this whole idea that the whole reason why the Westview thing was called a Nexus was because it was a honeycomb shape, and the fact that in like episode 2, I think it was in the opening, you like saw like I think it was like the Reaper or whatever's helmet. Like it was gonna be like an AIM thing, and you were gonna find out it was an AIM because Reaper was an AIM Hydra informant. So I'm thinking, oh, they're gonna do like a Hydra's still there. What's going on? Like I'm thinking like Reaper's gonna be the one that's gonna be the guy that Wu's looking for. I had all of these ideas, and then you find out it's nothing of that. And we're working ourselves up, which is great because let's face it, I think at some point Marvel's gonna be like, these people have some good ideas. Let's hire some of them on to do storyboards. But at the same time, we got to be understanding we're not writing this right now, so we need to enjoy the films.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's crazy to think that we started off, I mean, I didn't start off in Iron Man in 2008. People who have started off see it from the beginning come into something so big, and now how you started off not knowing anything, and now automatically down the road that's going to connect to this, or now there's those theories. Every single time there's 1,000 theories for everything out there now, and it helps and hurts in some aspects and things, but it's just crazy how over the last 12, 13 years of the MCU, however long it's been, how much has gone from 0 to nothing, and it's just crazy to think about.
I mean, they also they set up so many possibilities for TV shows on Disney Plus. I want to see like a new Asgard show.
Yes, I want to see more King Valkyrie. Like, oh my gosh, I just need more of her.
Yeah, or even like the kids in training as they're doing self-defense.
Like Lady Sif, and that kid that played Heimdall's son was
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I loved Axel. Oh my gosh.
Or Astrid, but Axel.
Yeah.
I would love to see Sif in a show. I feel like there was too little of her in this movie.
And I loved how Valkyrie and Sif were working together at the end because Sif was trained by the Valkyries, but like had always thought about going back to them. And it was like a concept where, you know, she was with the brothers three, she was with Thor, but she longed to go back to the Valkyries, and to see that for her, and that we didn't get her in Ragnarok. You know, we didn't see what happened with her in Endgame. We knew she wasn't on Asgard when it was destroyed. And I love that about it. I love seeing what was going on and that we get her back, because I thought she was a really cool character.
I still want to know where she was and what she was doing. That is like one of the biggest.
Lady Sif show.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Like, that's a moment that I wish they had let breathe.
Right.
When Thor, like that scene he played for a joke about the arm being an Asgard.
Yeah.
And it was funny, but I wish that they had played up this idea that, you know, maybe Thor thought Valkyrie was gone, and to reunite and to play that, you know, there were better even jokes, I would say, you know, that Thor then becomes like super attached to Valkyrie or something. And
well, they marry in the like him and Sif in the comics marry each other.
Yeah.
Like they're together. But at the same time, like also with the storylines, Thor was the one that was supposed to lose an arm. And we see Sif. So are we going to get her with an Uru arm at some point?
That could be. But no, I love to see the last time that we saw her obviously was in Loki and the memory thing. Before that was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think was the last technical thing that we saw her in.
She was looking for a Kree.
Yep. But yeah, I hope that we definitely get to see more of her. And Asgard, New Asgard, when does this take place? Because last time we saw it, it was just starting out to be rebuilt, and now it's completely built up and tourist and everything like that. So is this just over a year, a little over a year and a half after Endgame, or I don't know when this could take place?
Yeah. You know, a lot of people were also having issues with kind of some of the things that were showing up in New Asgard, like infinity cones, and how insensitive that was. But if you consider that they're an immigrant alien race coming to the world, and they're trying to find some way to build commerce, because they have nothing to offer the world at this point, because their entire everything, their resources, everything are gone. And what can they do? They can become a tourist attraction. And like even the concept, like I feel like even though it wasn't really like there wasn't a whole lot on New Asgard, I feel like even New Asgard kind of evolved at the end of the movie. Where you had like this, you know, Old Spice commercials and infinity cones and New Asgard tours, and then you have them actually starting to train people to be warriors again. So
it's kind of getting back to the roots of Asgard, you know, and it's kind of like a bittersweet, like closing, like Thor, you know, he didn't know where he was in the world, and now New Asgard is finally getting back to the place where it's supposed to be, I guess.
Yeah.
Ooh, I got a connection. Miss Marvel and Thor both deal with this theme of either connecting or reconnecting to one's roots while also integrating into modern society. And one of the things that that Thor does for Asgard and New Asgard by the end is he makes them all Asgardians. You know, in that big fight scene at the end, it's like, no, this is our heritage, this is our ethnicity, let's reconnect with that. And I think that's really what the story is about, is finding your people, whoever your people are, you know, because he's not a guardian, but he's hanging out with them. And then as the story goes on, he finds his people, he refines his people the same way that Kamala, I think, has reconnected with her people.
I still think they could have used the nano gauntlet instead, but
no, but honestly, think about it. The Infinity Gauntlet has more connections to Asgard than the Nano Gauntlet does.
True, very true.
I guess that
there was one
sense.
in the throne room, and we know that it was made by Eitri. So, and we know
what's the Nano Gauntlet?
That was the gauntlet that Tony Stark made to
Tony's.
undo.
Got it.
So yeah, instead of the one that wiped out half a civilization, use the one that saved them. But it makes sense. But no, I love the fact that we got the playback from the Thor movies. We got the little play on Asgard back, and we got to see Melissa McCarthy. I love Melissa McCarthy, and I thought she was so
You know-
hilarious
You
as
know what's
Hela.
funny? I don't normally like Melissa McCarthy. I've only liked her ever in Gilmore Girls,
Oh.
but I loved her. I loved her as Hela. Like it was the greatest slap in the face to Hela by the Asgardians, like the way she played it.
Yes,
And just having more Matt Damon as Loki and giving him more lines than just in the play was fantastic.
yes. I love their little during all the chaos. Oh, what are we gonna write about? Oh my gosh, that was so funny.
At times like this, we
Such
need to
a
have
playwright
something
thing.
yeah. Like he was like acting like he was like he typical actor, like he's trying to think that him doing a show is going to be something noble to help the people.
Right.
They need me. And those goats, by the way.
Oh my gosh, I liked them, but I could do without the screaming every 5 minutes. I'd like to see the goats all the time, but the screaming a little too much sometimes.
Let me ask you guys this. Do you think the goats were a legitimate gift for Thor saving them? Or it was their way of saying, screw you for destroying our temple?
Oh, 100%. They were like,
definitely.
look what you did to our prized
And he even
possession.
said,
You're
you've
getting these
accepted them,
annoying
you have to
goats.
take them.
Yes,
Screw
exactly.
you.
No givesy backsies, he says. But no, the movie, like we were talking about how it's only 2 hours long. The original cut, Taika was talking how it was over 4 hours long, and they were going to different planets and things like that. So do you think it was like Thor and the Guardians going to different planets answering distress calls for Gore, or what do you guys think that would have played out as?
So as the Guardians of the Galaxy are on, like, I mean, everybody knows who they are. They're probably gonna be asking for them, but it was interesting to see how many distress calls there were.
Yeah, they piled up like so quick. So Gore, he didn't just kill a couple gods. He was obviously killing a lot more than we had seen.
Right.
One small thing that I really liked, I don't know if anyone else would have cared about this, but the fact that they acknowledged their like Viking deities for like the first time since like the first movie was really interesting to me. So I remember in the first movie, Darcy was like a primitive species like the Vikings may have worshipped them as deities, but we really didn't get any like specific references. They're just shown as like these cosmic beings. But I enjoyed the fact that like Korg was like, here is Thor the space Viking. And I'm just like, oh, they're actually going off of the true mythology. I actually kind of liked that.
Mm-hmm.
What are everybody's opinions of the shadow monsters?
Well, as someone who's a bit terrified of spiders, you know, some of them are definitely a bit freaky. But
They were definitely creepy.
Like that was the point. They were supposed to be freaky, so I can appreciate that.
Was anybody hoping that they were going to be symbiotes?
I mean, I don't know if I was hoping. It was kind of like something that potentially, but I didn't think that Marvel would incorporate that into them, as because Sony and everything. I didn't see that coming into at least this movie, but I do like that we did have the Necro Sword and everything like that. That it didn't just completely change the weapon and everything like that for it. So I am hopeful to see where it goes. I mean, we didn't really get any information as to who had the sword before Gore. We just saw the body laying on the ground. So I don't know, what are they going to play into that at all? The backstory of the Necro Sword or something like that.
So
it was interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and Tara, this is where I feel like this is your area in the MCU. You know, you have timelines and you have parallel universes. Here, you had a dimension. So the reason why the symbiotes to me wouldn't have worked there is because I believe they come from a planet, not another dimension. And so this is dealing much more with, you had the deity dimension. Like, are they in another space time? Are they in, you know, the scene where Jane Foster sticks the pencil through to explain wormholes? I actually don't think is a throwaway. I think that when you fold the paper, and Tara, this is exactly the kind of videos that you and I go back and forth and they can talk about. But when you put the pencil through, that space between, that curved space, is that where the dimensions are? Is that where the shadow realm is? Is that where the dark dimension is? Is that where kind of this space between the spaces is?
That I could go on about this for hours. But that's a question that I have, like, are the dark dimensions like shared between all of the timelines? Or does like each timeline have its own dimension? I feel like realms are different than dimensions.
Right.
But like
realms
I
would
said,
also be kind of considered worlds in that sense.
right. Yeah, like I don't know. And then another random thing that I was thinking today was, does each like timeline have its own Valhalla? Like,
Right.
but this is my brain. My brain just
No, but I
goes
think
off
that
on
these are
these
the
tangents.
questions. But Tara, I think these are the questions that the MCU is making us ask now with Moon Knight and the what was it? What does she call it in Moon Knight? The
Field of
untethered
Reeds?
realms. The what?
There was like the Field of Reeds for Egypt, the Egyptians.
Right, yep.
Yeah.
But all of those afterlives, Valhalla, the Field
Yep.
of Reeds, the ancestral plane, she calls them realms of untethered consciousness. And she calls them like realms of untethered. I think she refers to them as realms. And so the MCU is definitely, Terry, you're saying you could go on and on, but I think that the MCU is pushing us to ask these questions and explore that idea of Valhalla and these realms of untethered consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, they're bringing it up in basically everything. So I definitely feel like it will be important. It's just like I was saying before, it's kind of overwhelming because now, we have gods and we have the celestials that we saw in that wherever in the shadow dimension. There's just so much that they're putting out there. And it's hard to know like what the hierarchy is and where everything is going. So I hope that they have answers for these questions eventually. And I know they will, but this film, just like that whole scene where they're there, we see the celestials. I feel like we saw a statue of the Watcher in there. Did you guys catch that? Like there were all of these different statues. That's why I want to see it again, because I need to
did see the statues, but I didn't get close enough. I have to go. I'm going again on Tuesday. I have to watch and see if I see the Watcher now. Oh my gosh, I have to look and really look at.
I think there was the Watcher, there was the Living Tribunal,
yes,
and there was
which the Living Tribunal has been in a lot of the recent films.
So they're tying this all in somehow, and I feel like it has to do with the hierarchy of the multiverse, or because where are gods with the celestials, and are the celestials like above that, and that like there's just something here, but I haven't figured out how they're tying it together yet, and I will.
Now also consider what we do know from like the other dimensions, like the dark dimension with Dormammu. We know that dimension is not governed by time. It was only brought, only time was involved when Strange brought the time stone. We know that with the Field of Reeds for Moon Knight, that what took this entire journey of like episode and a half for Moon Knight to go to the Field of Reeds and evaluate himself was but like microseconds in the real world, because he immediately came back to life in the water. So and with Valhalla, we don't know, because but there's one thing that we do know, and I think that this is the great way how they set up that end credit scene. We know that with the Field of Reeds, you can escape. And if you've read any of the Mighty Thor comics or even the Thor comics, the fact that we find Heimdall and we find Jane Foster in Valhalla means the story is not over. And it actually was supposed to be Thor. And this is where you kind of get into theories and stuff. I think Thor is going to die at some point. Something is going to kill Thor, and Heimdall and Jane Foster are going to help him escape Valhalla. So, and then that's when we're going to get the Mighty Thor back. And I love that she kept calling herself the Mighty Thor.
Yeah.
She wouldn't accept herself as Thor. I'm not Thor. I am the Mighty Thor. And I love that about it.
And when she was like, if you can't call me that, you can call me Dr. Jane Foster.
Yes.
I loved that.
I got chills with that.
Do you think, let's be honest, the people that don't like the film their issues aren't about the film. Their issues are about
They didn't get hugged by their mama. That's
it's because Jane is a woman and she is prominent and has power, and a lot of a lot of white people that have been represented in film for decades are recognizing that their time is setting, being, the center, the time of a white guy getting to play an Arab or an Egyptian god. It's past now. Audiences are demanding authenticity, and it's like, well, why didn't you hire any one of the number of wonderful Egyptian actors, which they did on Moon Knight, but they just don't want to see a female Thor. And so I do wonder if that was a response to, all the debate that was going on a few months ago about, well, she's not Thor, why does she have to be Thor? And they were just trying to discredit her the same way Star Wars fans do with Rey and whatnot.
It was like if you remember the whole Dude Bros thing, like, obviously you don't read the comic books, and then finally Jane Foster has come out as Thor, and they're complaining. I'm like, well, you didn't read the comic books, because this was a thing for a long time. Like, we have had strong female characters. Like, everybody's like, oh, well, why do we have to put she in front of Hulk? Because it's been like that for decades now. I'm like, I was just talking to Cat Without a Country, and we were talking about She-Hulk. And he's like, it'd be nice to just call her Hulk. And I said, I get that, but I felt like they missed an opportunity, because when they originally had the title art for She-Hulk, they had it as like she/Hulk, like her pronouns. I'm like, that is a really cool way to go about it. It's referencing her as her normal self and then her Hulk self. And I'm like, that's a cool way to do it. Then they changed it to the She-Hulk Attorney at Law. I'm like, oh man, it's such a missed opportunity. But it's like, people are going to get all bent out of shape for that. They're going to get bent out of shape for, and the thing is, just because she became the mighty Thor didn't stop calling himself Thor, but he was Thor Odinson. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, do they really, and this is what drives me nuts, because I feel like after Thor Love and Thunder, and spoilers if you've even been still watching and then you still haven't seen the film, I don't know what's wrong with you. But consider, Jane Foster does die at the end of this, and so Thor is left behind. So what does the media turn into? Oh, well, maybe Chris Evans will come back as Captain America. And it's like, we have a Captain America. We have Sam Wilson, who's Captain America. Why is this a discussion? Because they're still catering to a group of people who are whining because they're not getting to see everything as white as they want.
Did you guys see how Chris Evans went on Twitter?
Yes.
And he was like, Sam Wilson is Captain America. Loved it.
And he's even been on the record saying he would prefer to come back as Johnny Storm before coming back as Steve Rogers. And I'm kind of for that.
Because he's done his role, but it's I guess I still just wonder if they inserted that, but I loved it. I love the call me Dr. Jane Foster. Because fine, call her Dr. Thor. All right. Professor Thor.
But no, and I absolutely loved Jane's story, how they incorporated it, and I love that we got to see more of the backstory of Jane and Thor, because I felt so disconnected from them in the first two movies. I really did not feel like them as a couple. I didn't feel that chemistry, but now that we got to go back and see everything that they went through in their relationship, I could actually feel that relationship, the love and everything that they had. So I'm very glad that we got to see that, because if they just came in and tried to throw in that relationship and not have that, I'd be like, I still don't really feel it.
Okay, that, and the fact that Mjolnir and both Stormbreaker are sentient. Like, they have been, like, I did that whole, like, how many people do you think Mjolnir has killed just going to Thor's hand video? And people were so upset. And I'm like, Mjolnir has never been declared as being sentient, and exactly right, as being sentient in any of the movies. And now we've got it. And not only that, we've got Stormbreaker, who is basically an adolescent who is throwing a temper tantrum. and is like struggling with its emotions. Like that is just genius.
I loved it. I thought that was so funny. And people are complaining about it. I thought it was hilarious.
It was. And then at the end, did you guys notice that he had Mjolnir and he gave Love the Stormbreaker, and she's just this little kid with the big old axe, and he has his little hammer, and I'm just like,
and the Die Demon.
yes, that came out of nowhere. She was so sweet, and then all of a sudden, bam, complete 180, shooting lasers out of her eye.